My name is Charlotte, and I am 30 years old. The fight didn't start with a whisper. It started with a roar, right in the middle of the ridiculously overpriced restaurant I'd booked for my brother's birthday. Are you serious, right? Now, Liam's voice boomed, turning heads at nearby tables. He threw his napkin down, his face a mask of indignation. I ask for one thing, one simple thing, for you to be normal and fun for one night, and you sit there looking miserable, dragging the whole mood down. I can't believe you would do this to me, tonight of all nights. He wasn't just talking. To me, he was performing for his audience of fawning friends, casting me as the villain in his grand birthday narrative. Do this to you. The words ripped out of me before I could stop them, my voice trembling with a fury that had been simmering for a decade. I'm sorry. Is my presence here not enough of a gift? Is the fact that my credit card is going to be weeping for a month to pay for this little party not enough for you? I gestured wildly at the table, at the Houghton plates of lobster, and the nearly empty bottles of champagne he'd ordered without a glance at the price. The air grew thick and silent, his friends' smirks frozen on their faces as they watched the live entertainment unfold. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird finally beating its wings against the cage of my own making. Liam actually laughed, a short, barking sound devoid of any humor. Oh, here we go. Saint Charlotte, the martyr, always holding the money over my head. You think you're better than me because you have a boring 9-to-5 and a savings account. Newsflash, this is what life is about. Having fun, living in the moment. Something you wouldn't understand because you're too busy turning yourself into a sad, pathetic loser. There it was, the word, the one he'd used in private for years, but never before in front of others. It landed with the force of a physical slap, and in that moment, years of swallowed insults and silent sacrifices curdled into pure, liberating rage. I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. Every eye in the room was on us now. You want to see a loser, Liam? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. I looked him dead in the eye, watching the smug confidence flicker as he saw something new in my expression. Not hurt, but finality. A loser is someone who has to be propped up by the very person they mock. A loser is someone who, at 25 years old, still thinks the world owes him a party he can't afford. I reached into my purse, my movements slow and deliberate, and pulled out just enough cash to cover my drink. I placed it on the table. The bill for this lesson in reality is all yours. Happy birthday. The adrenaline from the restaurant faded fast, leaving behind the cold, familiar sting of guilt. My phone rang before I even made it home, and I knew it was her. My mother didn't yell, she never does. Her voice was worse. It was heavy with disappointment. Charlotte, I just got off the phone with your brother. He's heartbroken. How could you do that to him? To publicly humiliate your own family over a little bit of money. Her words were carefully chosen daggers, each one hitting a spot that had been tender for 20 years. For a moment, I almost believed her. The rage I felt in the restaurant felt childish now, replaced by the deep-seated programming that told me my job was to keep the peace, no matter the cost to myself. I remember when our dad left. I was 15, and my mum sat me down at the kitchen table. She looked so lost, so fragile, and she put her hand on mine and said, "You're the strong one now, honey. You have to be. Liam is sensitive. He needs us to protect him." And just like that, my childhood was over. I became the co-signer, the emergency contact, the backup plan, the loan officer. I wasn't just his big sister. I was his safety net. My mother didn't just let it happen. She assigned me the role. I see now that she needed me to be the strong one, so she didn't have to be. It was easier to put the weight on my shoulders than to carry it herself. Shaking from my mother's call, I did the only thing I could think of. I called my best friend, Chloe. I needed to hear a voice that wasn't tangled up in our family's twisted history. "Tell me I'm not a monster," I whispered into the phone the second she answered, the dam of my composure finally breaking. "She's making me feel like I'm the crazy one." He called me a loser, Chloe. He was laughing at me. I was desperate for her to tell me that my anger was justified, that I had finally done the right thing after years of being a doormat. Her silence on the other end was heavy, and for one horrifying second, I thought she might agree with my mum. But before she could speak, my phone beeped with another incoming call. It was a number I didn't recognize, an official-looking one. Annoyed, I told Chloe to hold on and switched over. "Is this Charlotte Hayes?" a man's stern voice asked. "I'm calling from Sterling Automotive Finance. We're contacting you regarding the loan you co-signed for Mr. Liam Hayes. The account is 90 days past due, and the vehicle has been reported as abandoned. As the co-signer, you are now liable for the full remaining balance of £14,000. The line went silent, but I could hear a roaring in my ears. The restaurant bill wasn't the crisis. It was the warning shot. This wasn't about a single night of disrespect. It was about a debt so deep I couldn't even see the bottom. £14,000. The number echoed in the space between my ears, louder than the car radio, louder than my own ragged breathing. The shock from the phone call had burned away, leaving a core of pure, undiluted rage. This wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal on a scale I couldn't comprehend. I drove straight to Liam's flat, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Didn't call first. I didn't hesitate. I walked up to his door and banged on it with my fist, the sound echoing in the quiet hallway. I was done with phone calls and quiet disappointment. This was a debt of £14,000, and I was here to collect, one way or another. He opened the door, and his face, already pale and puffy from last night, fell when he saw the look in my eyes. Before he could speak, I was inside. The car, Liam, Sterling Automotive Finance called me. 90 days past due, abandoned, and £14,000 of debt that now officially belongs to me. "What did you do?" He had the decency to look away, collapsing onto his sofa like a puppet with its strings cut. He launched into a story I could tell he'd rehearsed, about how his freelance work dried up, how he was too ashamed to tell me he was failing, and how he planned to fix it all before the bank ever had to call me. He was painting a picture of a scared, overwhelmed boy trying to protect his big sister from his problems. For a split second, a disgusting, familiar pang of pity resonated in my chest. He looked so broken, so pathetic, and the old urge to fix it, to make it better, rose like bile in my throat. But then my eyes scanned his flat. For someone who had supposedly lost all his income, things looked comfortable. And that's when I saw it. Tucked beside his television was the box for a brand new, top-of-the-line gaming system, the kind that costs a fortune. A wave of cold, crystalline certainty washed over me, clearing away all the pity and doubt. He hadn't been struggling in silence. He had been spending. He had been lying. "You were too ashamed to tell me you were broke, but you weren't." "Too ashamed to buy that?" I pointed, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous level. The friendly, concerned sister was gone, replaced by a prosecutor. Liam's sad puppy expression vanished, and a flash of his old, entitled anger took its place. He was cornered, and he came out swinging. "Oh, will you just give it a rest? It's just a car. You can afford it." He spat back, his voice rising. "Besides, Mum knew all about it. She felt bad for me, for all the stress I was under. She's the one who gave me the money for the new console. She said I deserved something nice to take my mind off things, and that you would handle the car. You always do." I walked out of Liam's flat, and the city noise just faded away. His last words echoed in my head on a loop. Mom knew. You always handle it. It wasn't a hot, angry feeling anymore. It was a cold, creeping dread that settled deep in my bones. It felt like walking into a familiar room and suddenly realizing all the walls had been moved. My brother's selfish actions were one thing. I had grown used to them. But the thought that my own mother had been a silent partner in this, that she had knowingly watched me walk toward a cliff and assumed I would just learn to fly, was a betrayal so profound it didn't even have a name. I drove to her house on autopilot, my mind eerily quiet. I needed to see her face when I asked her. She opened the door with a gentle, worried smile, and it almost broke me. Charlotte, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I walked past her into the living room, the same room where she had told me I had to be the strong one all those years ago. I turned to face her, my voice barely a whisper. Liam told me you knew about the car loan, that it was in default. He said you told him I would handle it. Is that true? I watched her face, praying for a denial, for outrage, for anything but the calm, reasonable expression that settled there. She sighed, the sound full of a mother's weary love. He was so terribly stressed, darling. He wasn't sleeping. You know how sensitive he is. I knew you could handle it. You're so capable, so much stronger than he is. And there it was, not a justification, but a confession. It wasn't a betrayal in her mind. It was a logical delegation of duties. He handles the emotions, and I handle the consequences. In that moment, the entire foundation of my life turned to sand. Every sacrifice I had ever made, every late night I had worked, every holiday I had skipped to help them, it wasn't seen as love. It was seen as my function. My strength wasn't a quality to be admired. It was a resource to be used up. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt a terrifying emptiness open up inside me. I was completely and utterly alone. I had been orphaned, not by death, but by the casual, calculated choices of the two people I loved most. I left without another word and drove home to my silent, empty flat. For hours, I just sat on the sofa, staring at nothing. The £14,000 debt felt like a tombstone. It was over. They had won. They had finally pushed me past my breaking point. Mechanically, just to do something, I went to my filing cabinet to pull out the original loan agreement for the car, wanting to see my own stupid signature on the paper as I pulled out the thick folder labeled Liam. A thin, folded piece of paper slipped from the back and fluttered to the floor. It was a copy of my mother's home insurance renewal from last year, and as my eyes scanned the page, a detail made my blood run cold. Listed under additional interested parties was a financial institution I had never heard of. Her house was supposed to have been paid off a decade ago. Why was there a lender on her policy? For a full day, I did nothing. The insurance paper sat on my coffee table like an unexploded bomb. The name of that financial institution felt more threatening than the £14,000 debt. My mother's house was her entire life, the one thing she and my dad had built that was truly hers. The idea that it was entangled in some new financial mess was a horror I didn't want to face. But the hollow feeling inside me was slowly being replaced by a cold, sharp-edged fear. This wasn't just about my money anymore. I called Chloe, but my voice was different this time. I think my mom is in serious trouble, and I don't think she even knows it. Chloe came over with her laptop and a determined look on her face. She's not a lawyer, but she's practical, and she knows how to find things out. We started with the lender's name. It was a secondary mortgage company, the kind that gives you high-interest loans against your property. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. Then Chloe navigated to the government's land registry website. where you can look up property ownership and charges for a small fee. We paid it, my hand shaking as I typed in my mother's address. We sat in silence for the 30 seconds it took for the official documents to load, the weight of what we might find pressing down on us. The documents appeared on the screen, a wall of dense, legal text, and there it was, registered 2 years ago, a second mortgage charge against the property for £75,000. I felt the air rush out of my lungs. £75,000. Where could that money have possibly gone? My mother lived such a simple life. And then we saw the name on the application. It wasn't my mother's signature alone. The loan was co-signed, not by me. The loan was co-signed by someone acting with power of attorney for Helen Hayes. The name listed as the attorney, Liam Hayes. The entire conspiracy snapped into horrifying focus. I flashed back to 2 years ago, when my mum had been in the hospital for a week after a bad fall. She was scared, on heavy pain medication, and completely overwhelmed. I remember Liam puffing out his chest and saying, "Don't worry, Mum. I'll handle all the bill paperwork for you so you can rest." He must have buried a power of attorney document in a stack of other forms, getting her to sign over legal control of her finances while she was at her most vulnerable. This wasn't a series of bad decisions. This wasn't about a car or a gaming console. This was a calculated, long-term heist. He was systematically stealing my mother's house out from under her, and she had unknowingly handed him the keys. £1,000. Chloe and I just stared at the laptop screen, the number hanging in the air between us like a ghost. For a few minutes, nobody spoke. The scale of it was just too big to absorb. This was beyond family drama. This was a crime. My brother hadn't just been disrespectful or irresponsible. He had become a predator, and his prey was our own mother. All the anger and hurt I'd felt before evaporated, replaced by a surge of ice-cold protective fury. Chloe looked at me, her face pale. "You need a solicitor, Charlotte," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Not tomorrow, not next week. Right now." She was right. This was out of our hands. I was no longer just fighting for my own money. I was fighting for my mother's home, for her entire future. The next day, I was sitting in a small, stuffy office, across from a solicitor named Mrs. Davies. She had kind eyes, but a voice that sounded like she chewed on legal documents for breakfast. I laid everything out: the restaurant, the car loan, the power of attorney, the second mortgage. She listened patiently, nodding slowly, her face unreadable. "What you're describing is a classic case of financial elder abuse," she said finally, her words hitting me with clinical force. "The good news is that the law is on your mother's side. The bad news is that the process is a nightmare. It will be expensive, it will be emotionally brutal, and it requires your mother's full cooperation. If she is unwilling to admit she is a victim, our hands are largely tied." That was the part I dreaded most. Armed with the damning printouts from the land registry, I went to my mother's house. I sat her down at her own kitchen table and spread the papers out like a funeral shroud. I walked her through it, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. I showed her the power of attorney she didn't remember signing. I showed her the mortgage application with Liam's name on it. I pointed to the £75,000 she never knew existed. I watched as her mind tried to make sense of an impossible truth, the fragile reality she had built around her sensitive son shattering right in front of her eyes. She stared at the papers, her brow furrowed in confusion. Then she shook her head, a small, stubborn motion. "No," she whispered, looking at me with pleading eyes. "There must be an explanation. Liam wouldn't do this. He loves me. He was helping me." She was retreating, closing herself off to the truth because it was too monstrous to accept. This was the moment Mrs. Davies had warned me about. The victim was defending the accused. "Mum," I said, pushing the papers closer to her. Look at it. It's all here. He used you. I held my breath, waiting. Her decision in this moment would determine everything. The entire war would be won or lost right here at this kitchen table. Watching Liam walk out that door wasn't the end of the war, but it was the end of the first, most important battle. The months that followed were a slow, grinding process of legal meetings and painful financial discoveries. The moral of the story isn't as simple as stand up for yourself. It's about understanding that you can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, especially when they are the ones handing you the matches. For years, I thought my role was to be the strong one, the family's anchor. I finally realized an anchor doesn't just hold a ship steady. It can also hold it back, keeping it from ever sailing out of the storm. The law, it turns out, is not a lightning bolt. It's a rising tide. To avoid criminal prosecution for what he did to our mother, Liam had to sign everything away. There will be no inheritance. A court order garnishes a large portion of his wages from the warehouse job he was forced to get, and that money goes directly towards paying down the debt he created. I saw him once, across the street, waiting for a bus. The charm was gone. The smirk was gone. He just looked tired, like a man carrying a weight he could never put down. He didn't get instant karma. He got something much worse, the slow, unending reality of a life lived with consequences. My mother and I had to sell the house. Paying off the £75,000 loan Liam took was impossible otherwise. It was a heartbreaking day, letting go of the only home I had ever known. But as we closed the door for the last time, it also felt like a release. My mother now lives in a small, rented flat that is truly hers. She is in therapy, and our relationship is quieter now, more honest. We are rebuilding, not on the fractured foundation of lies, but on the new, solid ground of truth. She is finally learning how to be strong for herself, not just telling me that I have to be. And as for me, my life is finally my own. The real freedom, I learned, isn't about money. It's about the silence in my head. The phone doesn't ring with the next crisis. I no longer live with the dread of the next favor, the next demand. I am no one's safety net. I am no one's solution. I am just Charlotte, and that is more than enough. So if you are carrying someone, ask yourself this. Are they holding on to you for support? Or are they just dragging you down to keep their own feet from touching the ground?